okay, that's cool, that's interesting. And then I just like, boom, God just downloaded something in my spirit. And I was just like, I was crying. I mean, I was like crying, like weeping on the plane. And I'm like, I hope people don't think I'm crazy. And I'm like, I was just like crying, just like couldn't stop it. And I had to write, and I started writing, like when God speaks, you just write it down. And what he shared with me was this word fight. The word fight was in my heart. And then I acknowledge that how can I deny the hope that is within me, the hope of glory, the hope of glory that is for not only for me, but for you and your family. And I believe that when God downloaded that in me, I began to understand that this hope is not only possible, it is a promise from God, that we need to fight and fulfill the destiny of our families and leave a legacy. You see, the enemy does not, and this is what he told me, the enemy does not care about you as an individual. He cares about your purpose, the destiny that God has created for you. You have a destiny. And that destiny leaves behind a legacy. And I was like, oh, God, that's good. See, the enemy does not care about you. He cares about your destiny. And if he can destroy your destiny, he can destroy God's work in your life. And you're like, oh, I got to fight because there's a destiny, there is a legacy that needs to be left behind for our generations to come. And so what's interesting is like God didn't stop there. So I was like, oh, God, like I recomposed myself, wrote down some stuff, wrote down the word fight. And one of the thoughts that came into my mind, I have this cup, that's the coffee cup that says, let go and let God. And my sister-in-law, Jasmine, gave it to me. And I was like, let go and let God. And I was like, sometimes when we fight, we have to let go and let God fight for us. And I was like, oh, that's cool, Lord, that's cool. All right, so then I'm like, all right, cool. Watch next movie, right? It's a long flight, next movie. So I go to the next movie, and for some reason, I didn't even pay attention to the title, but the title was The Fighter. The movie was The Fighter. It's about two brothers that grew up in this town in Pennsylvania, and one of them, just messes up his life, but the next one does an amazing thing. And then 18 minutes and 13 seconds into the movie, guess what happens? The main actor was Mark Wahlberg. He's there. His name is Dickie, and he's like training for his next match. And his coach, right, tells him, sometimes Dickie, you gotta just let go and let God. Let him fight your battle. You gotta imagine this is. You gotta just see this, that just moments before God gave me that same word, right, in the same context, and then later on, 18 minutes into the movie, that happens, and I'm like, okay, God. You're speaking, I gotta speak. All right, so this morning, and that's not it. So that's not all. So I go to all kinds of amazing prophetic things happen to me on my trip. At the end of my trip, I'm gonna wait for my plane to take off. So I get a chance to go to the Bible Museum. If you've never gone to the Bible Museum in DC, you gotta do it. It's an amazing experience. I could have been there for days. But as I'm there, I see this word, and it captures my attention, right? And it's the book of Joshua 4:6 that I read. It says, we will use these stones to build a memorial in the future. Your children will ask you, what do these stones mean? And I'm just like, God, what? I'm trying to understand this whole thing, and I'm processing, and it's like legacy. The stones represent legacy, and I'm going to get into that this morning. And I talked to Pastor Dakota. I was like, Pastor Dakota, we got to build a legacy. I tell him, we got to do this legacy thing going on here. Like the way, we're developing, or, as a city church, we're developing a war chest, right, to make war against the enemy as a church, as a city church, to be resourced to do that. And part of that means that we get to leave a legacy to our children. That our children will remember, right, when they see what God has done through us, right? They see those stones, figuratively speaking. They'll see, what do these stones mean? What did they believe back in 2022 at RVC? What were they contending for? What were they fighting for? What did they believe God for? That will be our legacy. Now, I want to share with you this morning as a fellow nerd. I love books. And I want to share some books that last year I shared some of these. These are some books that I like to share. These books really helped me. When I became a father back in 2006, I don't know if I said Benjamin's out here somewhere. There's Benjamin. There he is, my son Ben, the first one, and then Daniel, and then Joseph. And I was like, all right, I'm going to learn how to be a father. I'll read these books. These books have really been amazing. They really helped me, gave me a lot of perspective. Like, for instance, the book on Boys Shall Be Boys helped me understand, like my role as a father and how boys see fathers differently than they see their mom. You see, they see their mom with unconditional love. Mom can do, before mom, kids can do no wrong. But, they see their dad's love as conditional. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. So it helped me understand that I need to reiterate to my kids my love for them, because they see it as conditional. That the better they do that, the more I love them. And I wanted to reassure them that it wasn't the case, that I love them just because of who they are in the kingdom of God. The next book that I really enjoyed, I'm reading this book this year, is called the book Raising Giant Killers by Bill Johnson, Papa Bill. Great book. My recommendation for 2022 as a dad, as a grandfather, as a soon-to-be father, or just a man of God here, I'm inviting you to read this book, Giant Killers, Raising Giant Killers by Bill Johnson. And there's some really practical wisdom on raising our children. I want to share with you some information, though, some points to consider about this. From the book Strong Daughters, Strong Father, or Strong Fathers, Strong Daughters. This is where when a father is present in a daughter's life, the daughter realizes that's her first impact of how a man should treat a woman, how a man should treat her. And if he shows her like that she is like a princess, right, and then that she's loved and she's to be respected, then she'll grow up thinking that way and believing that way. And it's so important, the impressions that fathers leave behind. In the book Hero, Dave Ramsey, he brings it forward in there, and he says this. He says, it's time for the men in this country to rise up, stand firm, and truly become the heroes their kids need them to be. I truly believe that with a world full of strong fathers, there's simply no limit to what the next generation can achieve. There's no limit. And I'm wearing my Man of Valor shirt here today. Pastor Dakota and I, a few years back, we were at the Gemstone campus, and we're thinking about, man, we gotta take over the city. We didn't know we're going to be a city church back then, not the way we understand it now. But we realized that we need to raise up more men of valor. And so we stood up the ministry, the Men of Valor ministry, and we started doing the retreats and the steak nights and the men's breakfast to start to rise up and build up an army of men of valor for the kingdom of God. You see, there is a crisis in America. There is a crisis of fatherlessness in America. Did you know that at least one in four children in America grow up without a father figure in their home? This is terrible. This causes a crisis. And this crisis is seen, or you can see the effects of this crisis in, there's a 40% greater chance, or 4 times greater chance of poverty for children. There is more likelihood for crime and incarceration for children that are growing up without a dad, without a father. They're more likely to have 7 times more likely to have teen pregnancy, more likely to abuse, to be abused and be neglected, more likely to abuse alcohol and drugs. They're more likely to be obese, and they're more likely to drop out of high school. There's all these different statistics. One of them that really got me, though, was when a father serves. This is just like the regular stuff, right? Societal stuff, right? Incarceration, crime stuff. But the impact of a father, when a father serves, when he says, "For me and my house, we will serve the Lord," there is whoa, it changes dramatically the impact on our children. Do you know that if a mother is serving God, but the father isn't, no matter how much she cries out to God, the chances of her children continuing to worship God are very dismal. Like sad, they're 1 in 50. That's sad, 2%, right? But if a father says, "We will serve the Lord," and he leads, he leads his home, there's a 50% chance their kids will continue to worship God. 50, from 2% to 50%. You see, the issue here is that we've been duped. We've been duped. C.S. Lewis said, fatherhood must be at the core of the universe because the creator of the universe is himself a father. The relationship of God the Father and the God the Son is all of the relationships the most central. So when we see the role of fathers disparaged and downgraded in our culture today, it is nothing less than an attack on the divine order of the universe. Come on. Our society, our culture has attacked fatherhood, marginalized fathers as less than important. They said moms are essential, but fathers are optional. And here we are living the reality of those attacks. Sadly, I've seen mothers who try to be fathers. Terribly frustrating. You see, a mother is supposed to be a mother. A father is supposed to be a father. And when a mother tries to take the role of a father, it is a frustrating thing. It's not meant for them. It's not meant for them. If you're a mother here, you're a single mom, I want to encourage you to be a good mother and ask God to restore fatherhood in your children's lives. God did not intend it to be this way, for there to be fatherlessness and for men to be marginalized. As I serve in the refuge, I get to lead some of the groups, and one of the groups I got to lead this week was on boundaries. And one of the things is that we learn boundaries as adolescents, as children. And one of the things that we learn is if you, in your childhood, grow up without a father, you don't understand these boundaries. And so I asked the participants, I said, think back to when you were a child around 10 or 12, and I asked them, can you have a good memory? And some of them were like, oh, no, I can't even remember anything. I was like, is that bad? It's like, yeah, it's kind of bad. And then a lot of them shared my father was absent, or I had a stepdad that was abusive, right? There was just this lacking of fatherhood in their homes, and you see the effects of that. You see the effects of that. And so it is imperative for us as a church to understand and honor the role of fatherhood in our communities, in our homes. I think about fathers in this church. I think about Randy, Pastor Validia's husband. Randy, he's like an uncle grandpa, right? He's like an uncle grandpa. He's like that fun uncle grandpa that kids love. And we need Randys in this church to love on kids, that can play with kids, to encourage kids, right? We need the Pastor Mannys of this church to help infuse the kingdom culture in the next generation through Next Gen Ministries. He has an awesome testimony. You can see it on Facebook or YouTube, and it's just awesome. And I think about like what he had to go through to now have a testimony, a story to share. I think about Pastor Bob and his ministry to lead us in worship, and to be that worship leader present for other people in our church. I think about that. I think about Pastor Scott and his ministry role as helping heal and mend relationships, as he's one of our community pastors that deals with ministering with relationships. I think about that. I think about the various men in our church gathering, how they pour into others. Even Pastor Dad Coda is known, as they're known as Pastor Dad Coda, right? That's a term from the refuge, from the beloved, right? Because they see him as a father figure in their lives. It's so important for you as a father, right, to fulfill your role. Because that role, right, is what God purposed in your life, your destiny, and that leaves a legacy for generations to come. Amen. So in your notes, God gave me this word, fight. You can follow along in your notes with me this morning. It says, we are purposed to leave a kingdom legacy for generations to come. The enemy of our souls is not interested in destroying you as much as he is interested in destroying the destiny and legacy God has prepared for us, for you. Just like Joshua and the people of Israel, we must fight against the works of the enemy. We can join in the fight, first of all, when we remember that God is faithful. God is faithful. And it was interesting how God spoke to me on this one. I was watching cartoons with Joseph, because Joseph owns the TV at home. And we've been putting these really cool cartoons. It's like the Bible stories. It's like my first stories of the Bible. And they're just so well done. And I'm like, oh, this is cool. And I was like watching Joshua fight, right? Leading the people of Israel to fight and take over the land that God promised them. And I was like, oh, that's so cool. And so that inspired me. And we see in the first verses of chapter 1, in Joshua 1, 3, and 5, he tells Joshua the following. He says, I promise you what I promised to Moses. Wherever you set foot, you will be on land I've given you. From the Negev wilderness in the south to the Lebanon mountains in the north, from the Euphrates River to the east, to the Mediterranean Sea to the west, including all the land of the Hittites, no one will be able to stand against you as long as you live, for I will be with you as I was with Moses. I will not